So good morning, everyone. My name is Asha Aiello, and I am here today. I was the WorkReady Program Director of the Gresham Area Chamber of Commerce. I am here with Paul Ardam, and please tell me if I have pronounced that incorrectly.
You did.
Of this perfect of the Subaru Regional Distribution Center in Gresham, Oregon. Paul is the general manager, and he's going to share with us today things that make we're new, something a little different. He'll tell us about Subaru and what they do out there. But we're going to talk about what makes a good employee, and this really is relatable to pretty much any industry, I would say. But Paul definitely is the focus on how to get your foot in the door, and then also, if you wanted to show up and work there, how exactly that looks and what would make you successful. And I think there's definitely things that we can take away from pretty much for any industry. So pull up the questions. Paul, would you like to tell us a little bit about you and how you got to what you're doing, and then any business or a little bit about the business out there at Subaru?
Sure. So hello, everybody. My name is Paul Ardam. I'm the manager here at the Subaru plant in Gresham, and I'm actually new to the area of about 2 years. I relocated here from Chicago. I used to work for a Mazda facility back there and wasn't looking for a job. Subaru tapped me on the shoulder, and 5 months later, I was driving to Oregon. So love it. No regrets whatsoever. Miss family dearly, especially with travel issues these days with COVID. But couldn't be happier with the decision. And as far as my career path, I've been pretty blessed in my life for sure. But I started at the ground zero kind of in the industry. I've had 4 jobs kind of across 20 years, or 4 employers in the 20 years during my career, all within supply chain, logistics, warehouse distribution. But I started at one place and kind of worked my way up through there. Just did some hard work and people skills, which are pretty important in any position. Our industry, at least, that I've been with now and was with Mazda prior. So everybody hears Subaru, I think I work at a car dealership, which is often the case for a lot of Subaru employees, but I don't. We have a humongous warehouse here in Gresham. It's 840,000 square feet, and it's a parts warehouse. So we get all the parts for the vehicles that are made in Japan, and they come to Tacoma, Washington, and then they're trucked down to this facility. And then we actually serve the warehouses or across the country and fill their shelves. So when the dealers in that region need a part, they order it from the warehouse in their area. And that's kind of the spirit of our existence in this building.
I was lucky enough when I was with Cabela's to actually visit one of their distribution centers in Utah. And I think I learned more about the business by touring the distribution center and how we did business at a retail level. That was such a great learning opportunity for me. I've
Sure.
always been forever grateful to see, we talk about, oh, well, that comes from the DC, or, we'll get that from the DC. And once you see what that process is like and the sheer amount of what it takes to pick and pull orders, but also just the technology and everything,
Yep.
it was the best learning experience, I think, of my career to figure out how we did business on our end from the way they did business, and how really essential it was that we have distribution centers, that it can't just come from like manufacturer to.
No, that's a good point. It's a unique environment until you've been in it, most definitely. And there's a lot that goes into it behind the scenes to get that part to a dealer, or like you said, any distribution center. Amazon is huge these days, and what may occur behind the scene to get it to your doorstep. There's a whole lot of moving parts, no doubt about it.
Can you tell me, you said you've had kind of worked in supply chain and logistics. What got you interested in this particular field?
For me, I kind of fell into it a little bit, but my dad was in transportation. My grandfather was in transportation, and even though they both had totally different roles within that, kind of just growing up and hearing my dad talk and my grandfather, it's something I kind of gravitated toward. Although even coming out of high school or college, I wasn't too sure what I necessarily wanted to do, but wanted to be in an industry where, at least off the bat, I wasn't trapped behind the desk all day, and was able to move around, interact with a lot of people. The people make the job, in my opinion, anywhere you work, and just having that opportunity to interact with others and not just a keyboard all day. Granted, my current job, I'm stuck behind the desk quite often and interact with a keyboard a lot, but the first 12, 14 years of my career, that wasn't the case. And I still get out on the floor quite a bit, but just wanting to impact others. Really wasn't necessarily the field, but just my ability to interact with other people.
Yes, it sounds like that's one of the things that motivates you. I know I had two former bosses, both when I was at Cabela's, and they used their floor time as kind of their recharge. So they loved being with their outfitters, what we call their staff. They loved being
Sure.
on the floor and seeing the way things took shape, being able to give input, look over stuff. If they kind of got tired of all of the stuff up the day to day that is inevitable when you're the general manager of some place, they use that as a recharge. And it was a
Sure.
great piece of advice for me to keep me motivated. It's sometimes hard when you're just sitting behind a computer doing things that need to be done.
Sure. But it's very important. And even just early in my career, I heard from an early mentor, just the term, and I thought he made it up at the time, management by walking around. He's like, no, that's an actual term. And just getting on the floor, walking and talking to the people, and building genuine relationships with them, and just knowing where the heartbeat and the head of the folks on the floor are at, and listening to them. That's a huge part of the job. They're the ones doing the work. I tell them all the time, I'm just a guy in an office. They're the ones getting it done. So, and letting them know that they're respected and appreciated constantly, and it's genuine, is a large part of my role.
That's one thing I think, and I'm not sure how much you can expand upon it, but when we talked first about doing this, one thing you mentioned was that the company overall is really dedicated. Subaru is very dedicated to its employees, and you felt I believe you said, you felt really, not only do you validate your own employees, but you felt validated as Subaru. Is that kind of the
Sure.
company culture there?
Most definitely. That was the biggest draw. That's why I moved away and relocated, honestly. Might sound a little corny, but I was looking for a company that had a soul to it. And Subaru most definitely does. For the folks that might be listening, you probably see the commercials for Subaru vehicles and the love promise, which is very important to us here. It's social responsibility, being part of the community, and volunteering a lot. But it's more than words on a wall. It really is in the DNA of the company, where everybody in this facility has goals of, even beyond this building, annual goals of just doing something good outside of the workplace, whether it's volunteering at a retirement home, or granted, with COVID, a lot of things have been put on hold, but even the cans we collect, we're not taking them to recycle to get pizza money. We're looking for different organizations to donate that to, and going into a park and cleaning it up on the weekend, things of that nature. So the social aspect of being aware of the community you're in and having an active role in it, is really what drew me to Subaru. Mazda is a great company too, don't get me wrong. I wasn't unhappy there, but Subaru takes it to a whole nother level, and it's in the DNA of the company, which was a deciding factor for me to move from Chicago.
It's a big move. So yeah, I can identify it would take a lot to pull me from one company all the way across the US to another. And having worked for companies that I believed in and companies that I didn't, that I wish that more people, I feel like, need to hear that it's okay to believe and want to believe in what you do, because that really, during those tough days, that'll get you through it. If you're like, ultimately, it's frustrating. Everybody has bad days.
Yep.
There's down times, but if you're like, no, I believe in the company and what we're doing. I know I'm valid. I know I'm valid. I know they appreciate me. It's much easier to ride it out eventually and be like, oh, okay, well, the light's at the end of the tunnel. We'll get there. But
and they prove that constantly to the employees. Actions speak louder than words, as the old saying goes. And it's constant, never ending of that appreciation we get. Our headquarters are actually in New Jersey. So a lot of our, office staff is located there, but just going above and beyond for the employees. I mean, as a brief example, when COVID first hit, even talking to other business in the area, just through actually the Gresham City Council, of what different businesses were doing to get through the times. And, other companies had layoffs and, very impacted. We're considered essential. So we never stopped working because car part supply, keeping cars on the road, was deemed essential. And what Subaru did was, most of the people in this building are hourly. There's a handful of us that are salary. But for 10 weeks in a row, while they were working, they got paid double time for their straight time hours for 10 straight weeks. So if they were making $22 an hour, they were making $44 an hour for 10 weeks. And if they were on overtime, they made triple time their hourly rate. And my jaw dropped when I heard it. And, it's not something we sought here. It was dictated down to us. And we even did it for our contract workers. So we have Subaru employees in the building. And then when we supplement with contract workers or temporaries. I prefer the term contract workers. They're not our employees, but we even paid them double time and triple time during those 10 weeks. And if somebody wasn't comfortable working when the pandemic first hit, they were allowed to stay at home, and we still paid them their straight time while they stayed at home because, children are in school, et cetera. Parents can't just stop anything. So, but if they had to, we paid them straight time for those 10 weeks. And when they were gone, they didn't use vacation time, holiday pay time, no PTO. And that's unheard of. I even talked to my colleagues back at Mazda, and things weren't handled like that at Mazda as compared to Subaru. And it just goes to show the investment in their people, and they respect the work they're doing. And it's, like I said, it's more than words. It's how they treat all of us. And it's a great place to be. You have to enjoy where you go to work every day, or you're not going to last very long there.
Most definitely. Yeah. I'm absolutely speechless at that. That's incredible what you guys did for your employees. And I'm sure that was a huge boon to those families and a ripple effect, right? Because if they're taken care of, they're able to help other people in their community that are struggling. They're
Most
the ones
definitely.
that can say like, hey, I got an extra $50. I can go get some groceries, or I can go get some stuff and donate to the food bank, or,
Sure.
help pitch in with someone. So I think, the key there isn't just what you did, but what I'm sure your employees then probably a good portion paid it forward to the communities that they live in.
Most definitely.
So I'll switch a little bit. So we've talked about kind of what motivates you. So I won't revisit that again, but what education do you need for, you mentioned you went to college, but for the distribution center there, if I were to
Sure.
walk up and put my resume in, what would you want to see? What kind of education?
Sure. At least for me, I mean, when I started my career with a bachelor's degree, but it wasn't needed to get my foot in the door. It helped, but it wasn't a necessity or requirement to get the job. I mean, I came from a pretty frugal background and modest upbringing. So I worked and went to junior college and paid for it, and then took out student loans to get my bachelor's on the back end. But it surely wasn't needed. But at least as far as this building goes, high school education or GED is a must. But we even work with people. We use a lot of agencies, and we'll have somebody come on for a couple months, and when we get a warm fuzzy feeling that they're a good fit, we'll hire them on. And we've had people that will work toward their GED as they're through the agency here. To be a Subaru employee, they would have to attain that GED or have the high school diploma behind them. But I'm looking for good people, and just with good head on their shoulders and a good attitude and a good mindset, and being positive. Like you mentioned, we all have our down days. I do too. And not everybody brings their A game every day. But I'm just looking for good mojo in the building, a good culture, a good fit. We can train everything else. I can teach anybody to do basically anything we do in this building, whether it's our processes, picking parts, shipping parts, receiving parts. We have forklifts and other heavy equipment in the building. But that can all be taught. We have a gal here who didn't even have a driver's license, and she was learning to drive forklifts and all her heavy equipment before she even got her driver's license. So God bless you. But from an education standpoint, you definitely need the high school diploma or the GED. But we'll work with you to get there if you don't have it in your pocket. But it definitely helps to have it. College doesn't hurt, especially it depends on how much you want to grow. When you get at a certain level, it's a requirement. But coming in the door as a warehouse associate, we have 32 currently, and then other levels of different responsibilities within the building. But the entry level, definitely you have to have that GED to be hired on.
I think one thing that I don't know if we've lost it, if it's changed, if it's the nature of the world of work, but it's okay not to go to college straight out of high school. It's okay to work hard and earn your way up. It's okay to get into some place like Subaru and make a good, decent wage, and then turn around and say, hey, I have my sights set on X because gosh, that job or my supervisor's job looks really interesting. How did they get there? Asking those questions and being willing to learn.
Most definitely. I mean, I didn't know where I wanted to go, honestly, once I got my foot in the door. And honestly, after high school, I graduated early because I was kind of sick of high school, and I get it, how that can happen. And my first semester at junior college, after 2 weeks, I dropped out. I went back the next semester before, I could figure it out. And my parents were a big part of that. And thank God they kept me motivated. but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And especially when you come in the door here, like we said, you kind of have to have that high school education or GED to be hired as an actual Subaru employee. But the benefits here are astounding. Beyond vacation time, and it's way more than any company I've ever even heard of starting. But we have tuition reimbursement, and it's up to $10,000 a year, which is double any company I've ever worked for in my past. So as long as the position, and it doesn't even have to lend yourself to the position within this building, it could be accounting, finance, marketing, anything that is within a potential umbrella of Subaru will pay up to 10 grand a year. My current supervisor just finished his bachelor's last week. Subaru paid for it. January, he starts his master's. Subaru's going to pay for that. And he was actually just promoted. We have a facility on the west side of Portland, which is one of my customers. We ship to them. And in January, he'll be managing that facility. He started as a associate in this building, just to show that internal growth. And I'm one of like 9-10 warehouses in the country that Subaru has, and half of them are managed by folks who walked in the door as a warehouse associate and worked their way up over time. And our headquarters in Jersey are packed full of people who have grown through the RDCs. We call them RDCs, regional distribution centers, star warehouses. They're full of people in all sorts of departments. So as long as you could be into tech, actually a mechanic, we'll pay for that. We have Subaru universities all over the country for that particular need. Granted, if you came in and you wanted to do like early elementary education to be a teacher, that wouldn't be necessarily covered. But if it's even close, electrical engineering, sure, go for it. We'll pay for it and help people get there. And in today's world, education, I mean, it was nuts when I went through with it. And it's only getting more expensive. So having an organization that'll pay your way is tremendous, especially $10,000 a year is a lot.
I think more so what that says about Subaru as a company, it inspires loyalty, but why wouldn't you want to invest in your people, right? And that's
Sure.
showing you that if you walk through the door as an 18-year-old kid that's like, look, man, I need a job. I don't know quite what I want to do with the rest of my life, but I need a job. And now they get into something where they're like, yeah, I like my people, and I enjoy the job. And it's like all of a sudden it starts to encourage growth and not just a loyalty, but it's like, oh, you mean you'll help me get a degree in something I'm really interested in? Or
Sure.
that's investing in really in the workforce of the future, right? Whether that's at Subaru, and you and I talked about that, whether it's at Subaru or someplace else, it ends up being where like, you've really invested in the workforce,
Sure.
and a local workforce too, which again, it just
Most
speaks to.
definitely.
So what skills and attributes make people successful at your facility? And then I said in the field, but that's usually one of my kind of cover questions when we're talking
Sure.
about what accounting. But for yours, what you said that you can teach them pretty much anything. What skills and attributes make them successful? I know you and I talked about the importance of things like being on time is not being on time. You got to be early. You got to show up ready to work in your uniform, ready to go.
Yep. Detail orientation, most definitely. In the end, we receive parts from Japan, we store them, and then we ship them. But there's a lot of high valued parts in this facility. So making sure inventory is accurate, we're receiving parts accurately and shipping them accurately, detail orientation and not lackadaisical, and having a good pace to a good work ethic really is a very big part of it. And we can, like I said, we can teach the rest. Sure, there's technology in the building, but if you can work a smartphone, you can work anything we have in this building. And the vast majority of the population, regardless of age, can operate a smartphone. So we have scanners where almost looks like a grocery store scanner, but instead of the clerk scanning it on the belt, it's in your hand. It's kind of like a squirt gun looking type thing. And it has buttons on it and a screen display. So as you're scanning things and manipulating the system and where you're putting parts or where you're picking them, you have to have a detail orientation to that. But most above everything, honestly, and it's probably beyond this building for me, is integrity and accountability. Integrity is everything. I tell it to my team all the time. Mistakes are going to happen. I make them. Everybody does. We're not, machines. But learning from them, no, you don't get in trouble if you make a mistake. Granted, if it's the same mistake 10 times a day for 2 months straight, we'll have to figure it out. But we're going to make them. So just learn from it. And then how can we prevent it from happening again? And having that integrity where if you think you did screw up, you're going to voice your, hey, I think I might have messed this up so we can help you. rather than think it's a negative. What I tell my whole leadership team is if somebody's down, we're there to pick them up, not kick them when they're down, and to help them. I want everybody in this building to be as successful as possible. I'd be crazy to not want that. So even if folks that need to work toward improving, they're the ones I'm going to invest myself in even more just because I want them to succeed at their current job. But a detail orientation for sure, and integrity, and just a good head on their shoulders walking in the door. This isn't the place necessarily for, negative Nancy's, and not to sound too cheesy or corny, but we're looking for good, positive people. And we all have stress outside of work and problems in life, which we're sensitive to, of course, but somebody that wants to be here. If you're miserable at your place of employment, you're not going to do a good job. So we try to create an atmosphere and culture that is positive, and that we do a lot of various activities in the building to keep people's spirits up, and that want to be a part of it. So definitely detail orientation in this industry, but integrity across any job. You kind of have to bring that coming in the door. And from my past and my belief, you don't learn that in a classroom, and you're not going to learn that over time. You either have it or you don't. And so we're looking for people that have it, and we'll fill in the rest of the blanks in this building for sure.
I think one thing I always like to do would be defining integrity as you're doing what you say you do, whether somebody's looking over your shoulder or not. Yep. And I always like to define that, because we talk about, I think a lot of employers talk about it. We hear it thrown around a lot, or work ethic. Do you have good work ethic? What does that mean? Well, that means I'm there a few minutes early. I'm in my uniform and I'm ready to swipe my card and once I clock in, if you will, I'm ready to get down to the floor, get my equipment, yep, and go. And then work ethic, integrity to me is also, hey, Paul, man, I was going through this and I think I screwed up here. Yep. Here's how I think we can fix it, but I really need your help to make sure I don't do this wrong again. And that way, sure. I think when we talk about integrity, we think a lot about like, well, is that person, can you trust them? If they bring up a concern, is it a legit concern, or are they just trying to cause drama? There's a lot in there, but sure. People don't, I would imagine, especially in your specific situation, when you try to cover up a mistake, that can snowball really quickly. I would imagine especially receiving and shipping parts, that can snowball really quickly into what could have been a $10 mistake, or maybe a half an hour behind, to all of a sudden you could be days behind, and that could be a few $1,000s.
Tremendous. I mean, you nailed it. We store everything car part wise in this building: engines, transmissions, and there's thousands and thousands of dollars. And if you damage them, we're writing it off and it's scrap. But you're right, integrity is huge. It's a big part of all of that, and learning from it. And part of my job too is creating a culture where people know that they can speak up and they're not going to be reprimanded because they voiced a concern, even if they were the root of the error. Like I said, if it's a continuous thing, sure, of course, we'll coach you up, stick you with maybe a stronger associate who's more successful in their job, so you can learn little trade secrets, how they got there. But trust is enormous, as you mentioned it. And I mean, there's two ways of thinking. A lot of people say trust nobody, and they have to earn the trust. For me, I trust people till they give me a reason not to, because I find in life the vast majority of people want that and will gravitate toward that and will be trustworthy. I mean, there's 100 people in this building. If I didn't trust any of them, I'd have to micromanage 100 people and I'd lose my mind. It'd be impossible. So empowering people, training them up, and giving them the ability to do their job and make decisions. And I'd rather have somebody make a wrong decision and then if it became an issue, bring it up to me, rather than not do anything and not act. I don't want anybody to hesitate in the building and trying to do what's right. That's a big part of it. Do what you feel is right. And if in the end it was a bad decision, we'll figure it out. No worries. But having the integrity, as you mentioned, and the trust established, and that takes time. It's, when I was new here, I was just the new guy. Had to build that trust. It has to be genuine. It took 6 months to kind of connect with my team, as it should. It has to be organic. They don't care about my resume or my education, and really nor should they. I'm just the new guy in the building, so I needed to earn my stripes with them, and them with me. So, but it has to be genuine. If it becomes off as pandering, and you're only talking to people when you need something, that doesn't work too well. of establishing that trust and building the integrity that the person already has when they come in the door.
Absolutely. I think one of the key things I heard there, and there were many, was one thing that you pointed out, to encourage people to ask questions and understand that that's a natural part of working in a new job or starting in a new industry. I think it's key that you would partner somebody up that was new, or even making some mistakes with someone else that is more advanced, or maybe has a little bit more of that skill set, because I think a
Sure.
lot of times students get afraid, and when you don't know something, it's really hard. I've been there. I mean,
Me
when
too.
I started having to learn inventory systems at Cabela's, when I was learning all of the things it took to run a retail store, right, and how my job factored into that as marketing, once I started learning those things, I had to ask questions, and my poor fellow managers had so much patience with me, because I'm
Sure.
just over their shoulders being like, hey, can you tell me what you're doing right now, or why you're doing it?
Yeah.
Asking questions is key, right? You can't learn until you ask.
No,
And
most definitely. And we have, even with new hires that come in the building, whether they're Subaru or a contract worker, we have like 7 gates of progression before you're hired. If we threw everything at one person walking in the door the first month, they would be overwhelming. So, we start with one particular discipline in the building and get good at it, learn the process. I don't care about productivity for the first couple of weeks, just learn the process and get your quality down and do it safely. And then we'll work on you to get productivity, because we measure everything through those scanners I mentioned. We get reports, and we have standards that need to be met, X amount of pieces picked per hour depending on what they're doing in the building. But we ease them in to the water type of thing, and you get good at one gate, you advance to the second, and then you learn more equipment as you go. At the beginning, you're not on the equipment, so we slowly feed the information and the proficiency. Once we feel warm and fuzzy, they got it, then they move on to the next section. And once you get through all 7 and you're a good person to boot, we'll hire you on.
that's awesome. I wish more places had training programs that helped you acclimate, for lack of a better term. I think it's important that if you want to be safe, if you want your folks safe and educated, that they have time to kind of absorb it, and really master that. So Paul, you've given us some amazing advice today. Looking back on your career and the team that you manage there, what's your best piece of advice for a student looking to get involved, either in Subaru or at your facility, or just kind of in the industry as a whole?
Sure. It's really the attitude you bring to the table. For the industry, sure. I mean, you could go to college or things like that and look into supply chain management. But as far as entry level, it's really, like I kind of mentioned, not to overkill it, and maybe it's more for me personally. I'm sure if you had these with the other 9 warehouse managers across the country, you'd probably get a lot different answers depending on who's speaking to it. But for me, it's just a positive mental attitude, integrity in what you do, and accountability, and definitely the detail orientation, because it's precise work. To an extent, it can be monotonous because you're picking car parts or putting them away. Often is the thing, but just a good head on their shoulders. And I think that's advice to get into the industry. I can't imagine an organization that wouldn't want somebody with a positive mental attitude, and that they have integrity in what they say, that you do what you're going to say you're going to do. And if you can't, then you give a little feedback, heads up of why you can't do that. No surprises type of thing. So just being transparent is very big too. Integrity, transparency, and positivity. That's what I look for when we interview people. Sure, their background, their resume, even if they have a minimal job history, but even if it's, I worked at Subway and then, maybe the local Walmart, but I'm going to ask questions that it's not necessarily suited to the job at hand that you executed, but how did you interact amongst the people there? Because how you had a problem at Subway, or you might have dealt with it, or dealing with customers, you're going to deal with people anywhere, unless you're maybe a programmer in more isolated position. So I'm looking for more behavioral type of questions when I interview people, to get a sense of who they are as a person, as necessarily opposed to the skill set they're bringing in the door. The skill set helps. I'd be lying if I said it didn't, but we hire plenty of people that just give good vibe in that interview, and they're positive and they're energetic and they want to be here. I'll give that person a chance any day of the week.
That's fantastic. I will ask on video. I did ask in chat if the attendees have any questions for Paul, so I'll give him a couple. If you do, as you can't speak to either one of us on video, please put them in the chat and I'll give you a couple minutes. Something you said really, you're making me mismanage a team. First of all, I managed a team of about 25 during the summers when I worked for ERCO for about 3 years. And it was really that I knew most of the people that, I mean, their resumes showed me they had the qualifications, but it was really all about, I'm bringing 20 of you on to work with my 5 that I have on a regular basis all year
Sure.
round. And it was all about behavioral interaction. You know, the job was fun but tough. I mean, you were going to manage students in summer works, you had a caseload, and you were going to have to interface with their case management agencies and the high schools and the parents and us. And it was a lot. And so
Sure.
trying to manage that with like, hey, the day-to-day aspects of this job can feel overwhelming, but yeah, exactly that. And the times where, like you were talking about earlier, you do things to just manage your team. So making me miss definitely managing a team. It was fun and challenging at the same time. I'm not seeing any questions so far from the attendees. I thank you guys all for attending. This was great. Any closing remarks, Paul?
No, not more than I kind of already covered. I know it can be challenging. Like I said, coming out of high school, I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. And I was able to have enough credits, and I stopped going to school, honestly. Halfway through my high school education, I got the diploma and then just worked full time because I had no direction necessarily. And that's not, I get it completely. Even out of college, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But for me, it's like you nailed it. It's interacting with people. I mean, half my job is just people management and not necessarily managing mistakes or their errors, but them as humans and as people doing a job. And that can go anywhere. So I would just say the best advice I could do is be your genuine self. You won't last long, or you won't want to be in an environment where you have to put on a mask or a face. I mean, I guess we all put on masks now, but be somebody at home that you be somebody different at work than you are at home or outside of the building. That won't last too long. So bringing your genuine self to work and finding a place that appreciates that and welcomes that. I love the diversity our building has. We have all sorts of demographics, ages, race, sexuality, gender, identification under the building, and it makes us stronger for that. And we all respect each other's differences. And whatever you may be, or whatever your demographic breakdown might be, finding a place that respects that and really respects that. I mean, we have employee resource groups for various types of people. We do activities, during Pride Month, and that's where I got my koozie right here, and different little activities we do to celebrate our diversity, and just going somewhere where you'll be appreciated and you can be your natural self, and then the rest of it you can learn. You could, the success path is there, and if that's not there, the acceptance and allowing you to be your own person, it may be a tough path. So identifying that and looking for a place that values you as an individual. And then the rest kind of takes care of itself, in all honesty.
Can't disagree with that. Paul, I know we are working to schedule another one of these with a couple of your supervisors, talking a little bit more specifically about work that's done there. And I think we're looking at next year for that, January or February. I can't thank you enough. You have really shared some terrific stuff. Thank you for your time. And I hope you and your family have a fantastic holiday season.
You do the same. I appreciate it. And anytime, be happy to help.